All right, welcome everyone. This is my brand new segment, Jack Talks with Humans. It's exactly what it sounds like. I talk with humans who I am interested in. Have I got a human for you today? We have with us the famous Mark Sargent to chat with me. You might have seen Mark, those of you who are tuning in to watch this video, on my brand new YouTube channel. You might have seen Mark in various media interviews. You might have seen him on his YouTube channel, or of course, as the star of the documentary, Behind the Curve. Welcome, Mark. Good morning. How are you?
Hello. I am well. Thank you so much for having me. And just so everyone knows, it is 7 o'clock a.m. on the west coast of the United States, where I am right now.
Wow, impressive. Mark just told me before we started recording that he got up about 8 minutes ago. I told him I
Yep.
have not thought of a time when I want to have a conversation with someone 8 minutes after I wake up, but I'm already impressed by his spirit and commitment to talking to a random guy. So,
That's why I'm wearing a hat, by the way. I have not shaved. This is about as bad as it gets for me.
it's a good look for you. I like it. So,
Thanks.
that is how I introduced myself to Mark when I emailed him. I said, I'm a random guy from Ohio. Would you like to have a conversation? And he said, yes. Tells you what type of accessible person we're talking to here.
Oh, yeah.
I appreciate it. Hey, I called you the star of the documentary Behind the Curve. Is that right? Can we call you a star? Is that okay?
I mean, I am the lead protagonist in the film,
Lead
even
protagonist.
though when it was made, nobody knew who was going to be what.
Ah,
The filmmakers from Los Angeles, they contacted me and they said, "Hey, we'd like to do a documentary thing. How would you like to be in it? And then could you put us in contact with different people?" And so I did, and we shot with them off and on for 7 months. And so yeah, at the end, I did not know literally until I went to the Toronto Film Festival a couple of years ago what it was going to look like. And by the time I was done, it's like, oh, I'm in trouble. So.
the lead protagonist. There you go. I like that phrase.
Yeah.
Gives me an indication of how you're situated there in the film. Let me just ask you about the film. I was going to recommend people watch it, but I want to ask you, what's your
Sure.
take on it? Did the finished product there, is that did it strike you as a fair take? Was it a
Oh
fair
yeah, yeah, yeah.
representation?
I mean, no, everything that I predicted in the film that was going to be by the time they were done editing was pretty much spot on. Which was the flat Earth community hated it. Everybody in the flat Earth community hated it, but the general audiences, and I sat in with a number of studio audiences anonymously. They were very, very curious about it, and that was the whole point. It was about as balanced as you could get, meaning people. In fact, it was weird because when we went to different film festivals, when the director went up on stage, the first question ever asked by anybody was, "Are you guys flat earthers?" And they were asking this to the director. Nobody tied to the production of this film was a flat earther at all. They hated flat Earth. But it was good. It was a good balance because you had flat Earth. It wasn't, if you use a drug reference, it wasn't pure uncut flat Earth. It was flat Earth, scientist, flat Earth, psychiatrist, flat Earth, astronaut. And I could see people in the audience, it's like, oh, okay, I'm okay because there's somebody from science up on the screen. But what was interesting was for the first 30 minutes of that movie, nobody even thought it was real, meaning they thought it was a piece of docufiction. Literally thought it was like some sort of weird parody. In fact, there was a wonderful little story out of Los Angeles. Another editor from a different film company who had no context. He was just given the film. He said, "Watch this." At the end, he's going, "Wow." He goes, "What sort of budget did you have for this movie?" And they're going, "What are you talking about?" And he goes, "All those actors, they played it so straight." And he honestly thought it was a complete piece of docufiction. They go, "No, man, it was real." He goes, "That conference, it actually happened?" So yeah. But your follow-up question might be, would I have changed anything in
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
Not much, believe it or not. If the flat Earth community didn't want anybody, they didn't want any opposing views whatsoever. I asked people, many flat Earthers, and they said, "Oh yeah, I would have ripped out that psychiatrist." I go, "You realize you're ripping out every antagonist in the film?" I go, "You're turning it into a propaganda piece. You might as well do it in black and white newsreel style from the from a war movie." The war marches on. The flat Earth. And the only thing I would have changed would have been probably the stinger at the end for Jaren, the laser thing that they did, because it was a little bit of unfair editing, but it worked. Meaning, I sat there in the audiences. The audience had this wonderful little feel-good moment at the end. It's like, okay, I don't have to take them that seriously because something went wrong there. And I asked audiences, I said, do you know what went wrong? No, but it was bad, right? I'm okay, right? Flat Earth isn't a thing, right? And then they go on their way. But it was still a massive recruitment thing for us in the end. If you believe the ends justify the means, and I do, I'm a huge believer of that. That my email load, which was already pretty heavy, when Netflix picked it up and ran with it, because it was picked up by Amazon and other groups beforehand, iTunes and stuff like that. But right after Netflix picked it up, my email load doubled.
Wow.
Literally doubled. And it was like, oh, wow. So I had no idea that Netflix literally is the default entertainment system for people basically under the age of 30. It's like, that's your biggest bang for your buck.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely wide viewership there. So anybody who's listening to that who's not familiar, Behind the Curve is a documentary. You can find it on Netflix. What Mark was referring to there at the end, he referred to the stinger at the end. There's a portion of the film. They're doing some experiments to demonstrate the curvature of the Earth or lack thereof, and that's what he's referring to.
And by the way, they didn't even want to do experiments in the film. It was supposed to be a human interest piece. It was literally, and I did not know this until the I knew it was going to be a human interest piece, but I didn't know what their opinion on it was until they did the director's commentary on the iTunes version. And I was listening, and I don't know if you remember, when I was at the conference, there was a 12-year-old kid that came up to the microphone and was asking me questions.
I do remember that, yeah.
And all of a sudden, I'm listening to the director's commentary, and they're going, yeah, this is the moment right here where we had to take a stand against Flat Earth. It's like, whoa, you guys, this is news to me. What the hell? And it was because they said, well, you know the old saying, it's all fun and games until kids are involved. And they said, well,
sure, yeah,
you're messing with the future here. It's like, okay, first, and I completely disagreed with them, but second, it's like, okay, then why we even show it? Why even show that 12-year-old kid? It's like, oh, they're a threat. It's like, well, if you really wanted to be clever about it, you just wouldn't have shown any of that stuff, because you would be amazed how many junior high and high school classrooms called me up after that. The level of interviews, the age range just dropped. So I literally had kids from junior high schools, like outside of parent-teacher supervision, calling me. Wanting to talk about this stuff. Anyway, go ahead.
Wow. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing that. The reason I was asking, I was going to promote the film to take a look at that. Anybody who wants to learn more about this,
sure.
Kind of an overview of the flat Earth take on things, you could look there. But let me back up a little bit. I just jumped right in. There might be people who watch this video who aren't familiar with you or your work. So let me just.
Oh, right.
Let me just start out with an intro. Why don't you introduce yourself and tell us about the work you do? What are you passionate about? What is it you are? If I said, describe to me your mission, what is your cause? How would you describe it?
Oh, yeah. My name is Mark Sargent. I'm from Seattle, Washington, and I am a recruiter for the metaphorical university that is known as Flat Earth. So Flat Earth University, freshman recruiter. There are lots of people in our community that have more advanced topics and more advanced content than I do. But chances are, if you're getting into it, your first year, you're going to run into my stuff. It's easy to understand, extremely easy to understand because of the training I've had over the years. I can boil down complex topics into sound bites, basically. And that's what I did. I created a series of sound bites called Flat Earth Clues, put them out on the internet back in beginning part of 2015. Really didn't think much of them other than it's like, well, I'm putting out this question to the internet hive mind. The internet's very, very smart that way. And said, come back, hit me with it. And, put out my contact information. I mean, everything you're not supposed to do with the internet. And you still
found you. So, yeah, it must
yeah, exactly. It's like, name, email, physical address, social security number. Here's my bank routing number. All that stuff. And people came back at me almost immediately and said, yeah, it's not that crazy. Here's why. And then just things started to progress. And here we are 5 years later with 3 books, a Netflix thing, TV commercial. I don't know how many conferences. I don't know how many. 1,500 videos just on my channel. It's just been nutty, absolutely nutty. And none of it I wanted to do. Literally none of it. I had no intention. Nobody wants to do this. Everybody hates Flat Earth, including me.
Interesting. I would like to explore that here in a little while. And let me just say, I won't introduce myself just because you didn't tune in to watch me, but let me give you a quick context for our conversation here. To be clear, anybody who's watching this who doesn't know me or my position, I am not, in fact, a flat earther. I am what you would call a flat earth skeptic, or am I a round earther? Do you have terms for us? Would you call us something?
No. The term that I think is probably the most palatable is probably a globalist. How's that? Globalist, because we don't even use the word round when referring to the globe, because round could be a dinner table, your dinner plate and stuff like that. Globe, sphere, ball, something three-dimensional. Because round is, but that's fine. And again, you qualifying that, you would be like many people that I have talked to, where they say, in fact, hell, the Alex Jones show backed out. I remember years ago because they literally said if we do a flat Earth show, how many minutes can we actually do without actually saying the term flat Earth? And I go, why? They go, oh, because we're worried about backlash. The people are just going to freak out. So, but you won't have to worry about that yet because you're fairly new to the game.
People can freak out if they want. That's okay. But, I'm glad you didn't say
they're very polarizing. So be careful.
I believe it. You would know. I'm sure you've received all sorts of interactions with people. Probably not always the most pleasant, but
it's not as bad as you might think because luckily for me, it's not. It's more about the message. It's not about the messenger. Even after the documentary, I didn't have a lot of people. You would have thought I would just been inundated with people saying, "Oh, you're a dork, you're a moron, you're stupid," and stuff like that. And they didn't because it's not about me. It's about the message itself, and it's very, very old. Anyway, so go ahead.
Right. Yeah. So I just wanted to mention that Mark knew going into this conversation that he's talking with a skeptic. I mentioned that. I was very forthright about that. I wanted to make clear that I wasn't necessarily in his camp, so to speak. That's not necessarily that we're drawing dividing lines here in our Zoom call today, but just to be clear, if you were hoping for someone who was already in the flat Earth community, I would consider myself I asked you if I call myself a round earther or what you might call me, and thankfully you didn't call me a sheep. I was very happy. No.
And by the way, you should be skeptical. Everybody that's listening to this should be skeptical. You don't think that anybody in our community, and I'm not kidding you, I'm not exaggerating when I say this, everybody in our community hated flat Earth going in. The T-shirt literally reads, "I became a flat earther because I tried to disprove it." Everybody goes in, including me. I mean, I was a huge conspiracy guy in the terms that, not tinfoil hat stuff, but I had an opinion. Look, I grew up in the tech field, never got married, never had kids, and big nerd. Especially in my career, taught proprietary software for 20 years, and so I went down a lot of rabbit holes because the internet was new. I was going down rabbit holes when it's like there were only a few rabbit holes on the internet. It's like 9/11, yeah, let's go down there. And so by the time I got into flat Earth, I had pretty much run the whole buffet of flat Earth to where I was bored. The only reason I went down the flat Earth rabbit hole is because I've seen, like you're going through Netflix nowadays. It's like seen it. Is there anything left? Fine, I'll start watching the foreign dub stuff. That is what happened with me with flat Earth, and got into it, and it's like, oh man, it's a terrible thing to go into. But once you start getting into it, it's really tough to pull back. So.
Interesting. So I acknowledged this to you in our earlier interaction, and so I'll just kind of frame the conversation for anybody listening in. My goal today, if you were watching this video, someone hoping to see a debate about whether or not the Earth is flat, that's not really what Mark and I set up to do today. I am not going to be debunking flat Earth claims today. I don't believe that Mark has the intention of debunking any particular evidence or any claims in that way. I've been doing a lot of thinking lately about thinking. The way we think, the way we process information, how we arrive at conclusions. And so the conversation that I asked Mark to have with me today is I just kind of want to pick his brain a little bit about how he thinks, how he arrives at conclusions. And so, again, I don't think either one of us are trying to prove one position to the other during this conversation. I think it's more about, I guess, Mark, what I'm trying to say is I'm less interested today in what you believe. I'm more interested in why you believe it.
Oh, yeah, sure. Am I a more articulate version of Forrest Gump? Probably not. But yeah, why I think the way I do. In fact, I'm a little different in that I don't believe a lot of conspiracy people have issues with me because I don't take the common stance of conspiracies in general. I mean, most conspiracy people, it's all dark and sinister, and it's like my favorite movie is Heath Ledger's Batman, stuff like that. They really want it's really really dark. I mean, everyone wears shades of black and they talk in whispers. And it's like, no, for me, it is my qualifier for any conspiracy is, do the ends justify the means? Is it for the greater good? And I don't know if you're a huge movie fan, but every time I say that, Shaun of the Dead, the greater good. Seriously, it's constantly ringing in my head, and that is, are decisions made out there? Look, we all know there are conspiracies in the world, and many are media sanctioned. What I like to call it. It's like we all know, in politics and business and sports and entertainment and journalism, and yes, even science, there are conspiracies. There's a line drawn in the sand, and there's stuff that we believe in, and there's stuff we don't believe in because it's uncomfortable. It's outside our comfort zone. And in fact, the media doesn't even use the word conspiracies when they sanction it. It's either a scandal, unless people die, and then it's a tragedy. And then they try to explain it. And then if it's fringe, well, it's conspiracy. It's not proven, and blah blah blah. So, for me, that's why I qualify something. When I look at it, I say, if I try to put myself in the shoes of whoever is supposedly doing the conspiracy, and I say, are they doing this for a greater reason? Star Trek reference. I use a lot of pop culture references. I'm way worse.
That's all right. I'm a pop culture guy. It's
great. Oh, okay. The needs the many, right? And that is, look, we all know that some decisions are made that sacrifices have to be made. It happens in war, it happens in civilian life, it happens all the time. And that's why when I look at things, I try to be as objective as I can. And I say, okay, is this being done? I try to see, when I look at a conspiracy, I say, could I improve on the meaning of it? Meaning, it's like, why is it happening? Who's doing it? And does it make sense? And if that's the case, it's like, for example, because now I'm into flat Earth and stuff, if you get into flat Earth, you're pretty much open to anything, at least looking at it. Beforehand, 5 years ago, if you would have said, oh yeah, by the way, I know a guy who swears that that Bigfoot had Elvis's baby, right? One of those deals. Sure. It'd be like, yeah, get the hell out of here. But now, I swear to God, it's like, now I'll give you a few minutes. What do you got? Hit me with it. I mean, because how can I judge you? I literally start my day with the whole flat Earth concept. Anyway, so hopefully that's a decent overview. So.
That does give me some interesting things. A couple of things you said there fascinate me. One of them is you said, we all know there are conspiracies. You said, we know there are conspiracies out there. Right. I guess my question would be, what is your process? How do you determine that there is a conspiracy there? Because in my mind, a conspiracy, that's a claim. There's a claim that there's someone behind this, that there is something going on. So how do you arrive at that conclusion?
Let's go through the legal definition first, because there's a lot of stuff the media leaves out. And it's weird because I know firsthand, absolutely, the conspiracy is used in our court system all the time. For those of you who don't know, like, for example, if you decide to rob a bank, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure. You'll be as you do. Yeah.
Of course. Next time you rob a bank, right, you'll be charged with armed robbery. However, if you and 3 of your friends rob a bank, a lot of people don't know this. You'll be charged with 2 things: armed robbery and conspiracy to commit armed robbery. Conspiracy is literally just 3 or more people conspiring to do something either illegal or unethical or both. That's all it is.
Sure.
And so things happen little conspiracies, like, I don't know, politics is too easy. Let's not even go down politics. I mean, people commit conspiracies in politics all the time. But like business, Enron happened. The Enron scandal, the massive oil and gas company out of Texas, where not only, it wasn't even just that Enron took down, the government had to change entire federal policies because Enron found a loophole, but Enron paid Arthur Anderson, which used to be an accounting firm, $1 million a day to cook the books. A massive conspiracy. Huge financial conspiracy. But for whatever reason, the word conspiracy now, through media and pop culture and stuff like that, has now been turned into like, oh, you're into conspiracies. Like, no, there are conspiracies all the time. I mean, I could literally, I could spend all day on just about any topic you could think of with actually legitimate conspiracies. I could spend a day talking about Tom Brady, and the and the whole Deflategate thing. It's like, look, he didn't do it by himself. When you don't do something by yourself, if other people help you to do something that is unethical or illegal, then it is a conspiracy. But when it comes to the fringe stuff, what qualifies it for me, again, is does it make sense tactically? Again, for the greater good. And I don't want to get in, there's all sorts of conspiracies I could bring up for you. But does that conspiracy, when you look at it, understand why it happened? Is the ultimate goal of why the conspiracy happened, does it make enough sense to actually do the conspiracy? Just because something is not in the new, just because the media doesn't cover it, or they say, well, no, that's fringe stuff. That's fringe. That doesn't mean it's not true. It just means that it's more well hidden, or sorry, there's a lot of references I could give here, but let me give you a quick one from FDR, one of our old presidents, right? President during World War II, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He had a wonderful quote. I love quotes from people. They sum up stuff in a great little soundbite. He says, only give people as much truth as they can handle. Meaning, or another version in show business, like never tell people how bad it is. And that's very, very true. Sometimes, especially with the general public, there's no reason to tell people, kind of like why things are compartmentalized, in various operations. You don't tell people the whole scope of things because a lot of them can't take it. The Manhattan Project, a great example. The building of the atomic bomb in the United States. Huge refinement facilities in 3 different parts of the country. Everything compartmentalized to where hundreds of thousands of people were doing this, but nobody knew exactly what the ultimate goal was. And really, you wouldn't want to tell them what the ultimate goal was. Not just because, it might get leaked over to Japan or Germany or whenever we were going to finish it, but because it's like it was too big for them. Nobody wants to drop an atomic bomb on civilian populations, but we did it anyway. Now you can say, well, we got to justify it because we were going to lose a million lives, whatever they're going to say. To take out the islands, we needed them to surrender, or did we want to make a statement? Was it one of those, the United States ! Stamp. That's it. You finish the war with a slam dunk and let everyone else know it's like, yeah, don't mess with us, type thing. Anyway, sorry, go ahead.
That was helpful to me because one of my questions was going to be for you if it stops at flat Earth with you, or if you see conspiracies elsewhere. It's clear to me that you've got just from what I'm hearing you describe, it sounds as if you're willing to at least entertain various. Theories
yeah. Okay. Let's get into a few real fast because I don't want to. I mean, I could spend literally all day on just any particular one. But I try to boil them down into very, very small paragraphs because people are lazy. they are. I mean, there's a reason why we switched from voice to text, and that was it was socially easier to do. It wasn't physically easier to do. I mean, my keyboard, I can rip through stuff, but I can talk a lot. I can talk a lot faster. Was the Art of War. Great quote from the Art of War. People are like water. They always take the path of least resistance. So they like learning. They like the easy stuff. So fine. We'll get into a few. 9/11. When anyone asks me about, was 9/11 a conspiracy? I go, Building 7. Why did it fall? Why did it fall? 5 hours later, when a fire was in the basement, it wasn't hit by a plane. Rosie O'Donnell, who was on host on The View, she brings up 9/11 and she brings up Building 7 literally in the air. They banned her for like 3-4 years. It was it. She was gone. Most Americans don't even know that Building 7 even fell. It's like, look, all they know is about the towers. That's 9/11.
Can I tell you what that sounds like to me? I don't mean to interrupt, but what it sounds like you're saying. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. All right. What it sounds like you are saying is that if you can find a pattern, if you can imagine a pattern, if you can ascertain one, if you can, though I think the way you phrased it was, if you can make sense of it, you can make sense of it for the greater good. Is that demonstration that the conspiracy is actually there? In other words, if I can conceive of a conspiracy, is that evidence that the conspiracy actually exists?
For the most part, yeah. And I'll give you one that's not even an exclusive one I came up with real fast. Well, the 9/11 thing, I'll give you real fast, which is, look, and I'm not trying to be glib. I'm not trying to be ultra blunt when I say this, but
Sure.
look, America is a resource consumer. We consume a huge amount of resources, and for lack of a better statement, we need the oil. We do, we do, we do. Look, the oil boom in the United States has been gone for a long time, and we know where the oil is, and we had to take it. Unfortunately, mothers don't like sending their sons to fight for things, but they absolutely will fight for revenge. It is literally one of the oldest tricks in the book, if not the oldest trick in the book. And that is you walk up to someone, you hit them in the back of the head, and when they turn around, you point to the guy next to you. It is literally one of the oldest tricks in the book, and it works. It works almost every time without fail. How would you get into the Middle East? Revenge. That's how you do it, and you do it as quickly and as dramatically as you can. And I have done the same thing. Maybe not exactly the same thing, but it worked, and we are there over there permanently. Let me give you a one that most people. It's not as controversial, but you'll understand this. And it was in my last book, and I came up with it completely on my own. No one's ever touched it. You can look up on the web all day long.
Oh, good. Okay.
Which is the Panama Canal. Is that a conspiracy? Now, at first glance, you'd be like, no, of course not. It's an engineering marvel. It's a great thing, but it's not a conspiracy.
Sure.
Like, oh, okay. There's all sorts of engineering marvels out there. Hoover Dam, for example. Hoover Dam was, wonderful, fantastic structure. How many people died during the making of that? About 70. Makes sense. People fall. There's trucks turns over. I mean, it's not like back in the day, people died during construction. Probably we're a little safer now, but people still die from time to time, right? How many people died during the construction of the Panama Canal? The better part of 6,000. Wow, that's pretty impressive considering it's just a ditch. Basically, it's being dug through the jungle. So why'd they all die? And wouldn't surprise you, of course. And most people will just go, oh, okay. When I say, well, they died of malaria and yellow fever. And then you say, well, of course, it's expected. Again, the Heath Ledger line. It's like, well, it's part of the plan. We know people die of malaria and yellow fever. It's not surprising. I go, there's no conspiracy in that. And I go, well, what if I told you they knew they were going to die? Meaning they knew full well that 1 in 8 people that went down there were going to die of this. And they sent them anyway. And you say, well, they didn't know. I go, well, yeah, they did, because we didn't start the Panama Canal. The French did. The French did in the late 1800s, and the French didn't have mosquito netting and insect repellent, and they lost so many men that they quit. They just gave up. They were protesting in Paris. They lost 21,000 men. I mean, huge amounts. That's a lot of men back in the late 1800s. That's shiploads of people just dropping like mosquitoes. And when they just put down their shovels, literally abandoned all their equipment and left, and we came down there, and so imagine a meeting, a logistics side for the United States government. They say, how many men do you think we're going to lose doing this? It's like, I don't know, maybe with our advanced stuff, maybe 10,000. It's like, yeah, let's do it anyway. Do the ends justify the means in this case? Yeah, it does. Absolutely does. It is the military naval choke point of the entire world. There is no more strategic naval choke point more valuable than this. It is also the most expensive toll road in the world. We made millions and millions and millions and millions of, probably billions in adjusted dollars from ships that have to go through, because otherwise you have to go around the Cape, to do this. Everybody knows this. So where's the conspiracy? The conspiracy is that you don't tell people the danger going in, and you sacrifice lives to do it. And again, this is a great example of, do the ends justify the means? In my opinion, yes, they do. Yes, they do. We've done this in just about every American war you can think of, where the conspiracy comes in, and that is real quick. What would be the first one? You sacrifice the Alamo, for example, down in Texas. Just a fort with 200 men. You don't send reinforcements. You let the Mexican army overrun them. And then you use that as a war cry. And what do you get out of that? For those 200 guys, what do you get? You get Texas, New Mexico, because there used to be an old Mexico, Arizona, and that worthless piece of real estate called California. Trillions of dollars worth of real estate for 200 guys. Oh, yeah. Piece of cake. Sacrifice the battleship Maine. You blow it up yourself, right? Back in for the Spanish-American War. Most people don't even know we even went to war with Spain. What do you get for that? You trade, again, 200 lives. You get Guam, Puerto Rico, the Philippines. We could have probably even taken Cuba if we put a little more effort into it. And Teddy Roosevelt. That's what got Teddy Roosevelt on Mount Rushmore. It was just brilliant. I mean, there's all sorts of little conspiracies, pawns that are sacrificed in different chess games that end up, again, it's not supposed to be sinister or gloomy. It's just the cost of doing business sometimes. There are decisions made out there that the general public doesn't get to make. They don't. It's the impossible choice for people. The old saying, again, I don't want to ramble too much, which is, would you sacrifice a child to cure cancer? Some people would say yes. Some people would say no. And then you qualify and say, yeah, but what if it's your child? It's the impossible choice. You can't make it. Even though you know full well, the needs of the many, well, that decision, some of those decisions are taken out of your hands, and they are made. And some of them are made public, some of them aren't. If they're made public, they're completely sanctioned. If they're not made public, they're conspiracies. There you go.
I appreciate you. I let you share that without interrupting, because you actually, what you were doing is you were giving me an example of what I was referring to. A moment ago, I said, if you can conceive of, or if you can make sense of a pattern or a conspiracy theory of some kind, is that sufficient reason to believe it? And then you gave me an example from a moment ago. We talked about being skeptics. You said you encourage people to be skeptics.
Yeah.
In my mind, a skeptic is someone. There's two components to me to being a skeptic. One is we accept claims with proper justification. The second part of that is a willingness to revise our views or change our mind when new information is presented. So listen to you say that. You gave the legal definition of conspiracy. I'll point out, in the legal world, we can be charged with conspiracy when there is sufficient evidence that a conspiracy has taken place or transpired. So I guess what I want to ask you, you gave us an example there of a pattern that you have discerned throughout history. You've actually tied the Panama Canal to several other events. My question to you is, when you get a new piece of information, when you're reading, when you're studying, when you come across a new piece of information, what is your process for determining whether this is a part of the conspiracy or whether there might be another explanation for this piece of information?
I look at the cost benefit. Whenever I get any sort of information, whatever it is, I again try to fit it into the puzzle. But the big thing is, I say, okay, does somebody gain or does somebody lose from it? And is the reason why it's being hidden because you know that there's going to be backlash? So
the standard of measure is if I want to, again, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth, so please.
No, it's fine. It's fine.
If I ever misconstrue or misstate your position, feel free to correct me.
You're fine.
What I hear you saying is, if you yourself, the standard here of determining whether or not there's conspiracy is, can you make sense of it by fitting it in the pattern in some way? Is that right? Right.
Yeah. Because I'm a little different from your normal conspiracy guy, because I will put myself all day long. In fact, it's one of my favorite things to do, in the government shoes, which is why I probably get accused of being an agent all the time. I seriously do.
Being an agent? Is that what you said?
Oh yeah, I get accused of being an agent all the time.
Oh yeah, you've got my own vibes. I can tell.
Whatever. Yeah. No. I mean, but I do. I mean, because I will look from the agency side. I will say, if I was the government, let's boil it down. If I was the government, would I do this, or would I do it this way? And I'll look hard. I'll go, yeah, what do I get out of it? What do I get out of it? If I'm the government, or the powers that be, as we like to call them. If there's a benefit to it, and you realize it's like, okay, if I'm the powers that be and I get something out of it, and it's something you really don't want to be transparent with the public about, because you're like, they're not going to like this very much. One of my favorite quotes is, some things are just better left unsaid. It's true. It's true. And I have done this. I mean, I have done this personally, even in microscopic things of power. I used to be the president of an HOA out in Colorado. And there was things that happened during our private meetings that we'd look around and be like, yeah, so we're going to do this. We're going to put this in the minutes. Anyone? No. Okay, then. And we'll move forward, because it's like, there's no reason there's a lot of things the general public just doesn't need to know. To use, how many times have we heard this? Ignorance is bliss. And there's a lot of things that I believe there are a lot of decisions that are made, even conspiracies that no one knows about, including me, that are made just because, like, yeah, you know what, just keep the public, you want to keep the public as happy as possible. You don't want them, just completely wringing their hands all the time, especially about what you're doing, because you don't want to be overthrown or even talk about it. You don't want people pointing at you. It's like, what you're doing is unethical or whatever, or you should have, you should have consulted the public. It's like, don't have to do it. It's kind of like the private company thing. No shirt, no shoes, no service, right? People forget that. It's like, oh, you're discriminating. It's like, no, it's a private company. And when governments come along, let's not even get into that.
So you said you put yourself in the shoes of who you believe to be behind the conspiracy. In this case, you said the government might be an example. You put yourself in their shoes, and if you can make sense of a conceivable reason how this would fit in the pattern, that's justification. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
I say Mark Sargent stuffs cotton candy up his nose, and so I put myself in Mark's shoes, and I say, you know what? He might like the feel of it. He might enjoy the attention of getting cotton candy in his nose. I can make sense of it. Therefore, it must be true that Mark Sargent sticks cotton candy up his nose. Does it?
No, okay. Does that mean it absolutely must be true? No.
Okay.
No, but it makes it a lot more plausible.
I see.
Like for example, the whole sacrificing of the Alamo, for example, it's a good move. It's a good move. Because remember, Texas was trying to be an independent country, and the government didn't want that. And so they're like, okay, look, we'll give you statehood, because they were also like, we'll take statehood. We'll give you statehood, but in addition, we're going to use that as momentum and just keep heading west and just carve out a thing for, away from Mexico. And it's like, you look back at, hindsight, and say, you know what? That's a solid move. I mean, investment-wise, ask anyone in high finance. It's like return on investment. Oh my God! So and also, by the way, and I'm not trying to be dark and weird or anything, but I am a huge believer of because some people that say, well, you can't put a price on human life. Yes, you can. All day long, every single day, you can put a price on human life. We do it all the time, not just in the military. We do it in corporations all the time, and we used to do a lot more. And people don't like hearing that, because then all of a sudden they relate it personally. They say, well, you can't put a price on my life, or you can't put a price on my family's life. It's like, no, you cannot put a price on your mother or your father's life. You can't do it. But objective powers absolutely can, because they are not looking at you in the same context. They are looking you on a much, much bigger board. And, pieces have certain values to them. But that's what happens. I mean, come on. The reason why they call them pawns in the first place. And I'm not trying to be weird when I say that.
Sure, I believe it. As I listen to you speak, it seems to me that there is, and again, tell me if I'm wrong here. It sounds to me, in your way of thinking, there doesn't seem to be much distinction between claims and evidence. A portion of what you've just shared with me, it's a variety of claims. In other words, when I say claim, it's not necessarily, you said you may not have 100% certainty about something, but it's plausible. Right. But to put forth the idea that, for example, you were mentioning the Panama Canal, the Alamo, all these different things, you have stated that because it is potentially possible that those things were done in that way, that you find that to be plausible. And so I guess, is there a distinction in your mind between claims and evidence?
Not much. Only because I keep tumbling over the three-dimensional idea in my head, and I keep looking for ways to improve upon it. Now, I've revised things over the years, different ideas, but until I can, it's kind of like science in a way. Until I can, that's what I'm going with. Science is one of those famous things I say about science. So I shouldn't say it's famous, which is science is true until it's not. Science is, this is it. And then all of a sudden it's like, nope, it's not that anymore. It's like, now this is the new it. Like, okay, it frustrates me, but I do that sometimes too. I mean, I think everybody does. You go with what you know, and then if that has to be revised, well, then you either accept it or you don't. That's the tough part for some people. Some people are really sticklers. It's like, nope, that's it. That's, they dig in their heels and that's it. And you're right. It does. A lot of the times it does come down to evidence, or or an opinion, again, something that makes more sense to you. Because for me, peer pressure and the overwhelming opinion of the masses doesn't really do anything for me. For me, it's got to make sense for me. So I'm not one of those guys that I never have been. I was just born that way. That went along with the crowd.
Hmm.
It's like I never understood the saying where, I mean, granted, when I was really young, maybe I did, where it's like, well, you've heard your parents like, if a million people jumped off a bridge, would you go with them? And it's like, no, I wouldn't. But then as I got older, I understood. It's like, yeah, there's a lot of people that would jump off that bridge because they wanna go with the crowd. A perfect example would be, not to go off into this too much, but would be the whole mask wearing thing. Whereas once we hit a certain percentage, the mask was people. I know a lot of people that just put on the mask because it was less hassle. They didn't want to be the only person in the grocery store, places that weren't required. They wore the mask just because they're all the people around them. They wanted to fit in. It's weird. We want to be individuals, but we want to fit in. Sorry, one second. Hold your thought for 1 second. I hear a cat.
Sure, a cat.
1 second.
Yeah, no problem. Well, hopefully you can still hear me there, Mark. If not, I'll get you caught up when you come back here to the screen. Uh, the idea of this message, anybody who's watching this at the moment, the idea of this video rather, is I want to get into the idea of the way people think. And so this has been helpful for me to listen to Mark give some indication here. We were talking about claims and evidence. When Mark returns to the screen, I promise, by the way, if you're curious why I'm not editing this out, I said I'm going to put an unedited video, so I want to leave this unedited there. So we'll.
I'm back.
Okay
I'm back.
There you go. So what I was just saying to anybody who might be listening here, a couple of things you brought up are actually on my mind, and so I want to bounce a couple of questions off you. You brought up science. You mentioned science, and so I want to posit for you what I think is a key difference between the scientific process and the frankly flat Earth approach to science that I saw on Behind the Curve, and other examples as well. You said to me, essentially, I'm not trying to put words in your mouth. What it sounds like is one, that you said that there is many ways not much of a distinction between a claim and evidence, but also you went on to say that essentially you are looking for that pattern. You're looking for a way to make sense of things.
Right.
So in the process of science, just as you said, science is true until it's not. And I think the reason for that is in the process of science, we are attempting to falsify claims. We try to prove something is true by seeking ways to falsify it. If we can prove it false, science advances because now we've demonstrated that our hypothesis is incorrect. And so now we're moving forward. What seems to me to be the case is what you're describing sounds like the opposite direction. Instead of saying, I've got this hypothesis, I have this idea, and so I'm going to pursue some rigorous testing to determine whether or not that is a false claim or whether we need to amend our view, what it sounds as if is if you are looking to truify it. We have this idea, and so I'm going to do some experiments to prove that it's true. And so, for example, if you go looking for a pattern, if you go looking for a conspiracy, is it possible you'll find one because that's what you're looking for?
In some cases, yes, you're right. When it comes to some cases, I am looking to connect the dots. Absolutely. Little different though with flat Earth, in that again, everybody that got into the whole flat Earth thing went in just again hating it. It's like no, I'm going to shoot it down. And when they tried to shoot it down, that's when they started having problems. Again, I was not, I made the clues, and there was a lot of things they didn't talk about in the documentary for obvious reasons, because they did not want to shine us in any sort of good light, which was one of the first things was the whole long distance photography thing. By far and away, one of the biggest things people do. And I did not even suggest it in the clues. People just started running to the beach with high definition cameras, which is one of the big game changers. And in the process, again, of trying to shoot it down, they have a hard time. Okay, let me rephrase this. Again, all other conspiracies, what you're saying there is very, very much like that. But with flat Earth, it's kind of like this. We treat it like a court case, in that, can I prove to you the flat Earth right now? Can I absolutely prove it? No. However, I can create so much reasonable doubt in the globe that the only place you have left to turn is some sort of flat Earth model. And it's got a kind of an ethereal quality to it, but that's how everyone goes down the road. Everyone starts going, oh no, I'm I'm going to prove the globe. I'm going to prove the globe. And they keep trying to prove it, and there's these loose ends that just keep, these nagging loose ends that keep popping up. And by the time they're done, I mean, there's this weird flipping process to where it's like, you know, kind of like me. And I was really stubborn. I mean, it took me 9 months. And then finally I was like, you know what? I'm going the other way. It's flat. And then again, the internet hive mind, which I am a huge believer in. You know, the internet, people are stupid, but it's kind of the opposite of Men in Black line. Whereas like people on the internet, the cumulative knowledge is very, very good. And so that's why I went to him. I said, okay, show me where I'm wrong. And not enough people, the majority of people who are coming at me were saying, no, it's not. So with you're right. With other conspiracies, yes. For me, I'm trying to connect the dots. With Flat Earth, I absolutely was not. I did not in any way whatsoever. I liked my life the way it was. In fact, that's literally the first paragraph of the book I wrote, which I said, look, if you like your life, you know, what's the line? If you got a good beat on things, don't look at this, because there's a point of no return. And if you get past this certain point, you can't come back from it, because, again, kind of like the Matrix thing, there's nothing to come back from.
You know, and I hear that's helpful for me to hear. That's really what I think I'm trying to get at. We live in this age nowadays, in a lot of ways. You know, you mentioned yourself, there's already been conspiracies around for a long time, but now especially conspiracy ideas are getting a lot of prominence and coverage in the media, and so that's kind of what I'm getting at with conspiracy thinking. And so I mentioned that we weren't necessarily going to debate specific claims, and so I appreciate that you made a distinction between flat Earth and experimentation and conspiracy theories in general. You said a couple interesting things, and if it's okay, I want to ask some follow-up questions here. You mentioned that with many conspiracies, you are trying to connect the dots. And so I guess I do not want to conflate. I know that there are differences here. I don't want to send the signal that every conspiracy is on equal footing and that everyone, you know, no. There are people in the flat Earth community who would not like to be connected to QAnon, and there are people in the QAnon community who do not want to be connected to flat Earth. So that's not what I'm suggesting. But generally speaking, with conspiracies, there's a few things I noticed. When we were talking about the movie a little while ago, Behind the Curve, you used some language, and I'm curious. I'm not trying to put you on the spot about the language you used, but I noticed that you said protagonist and that you framed the scientist as the antagonist. And what that reminds me of. Now, you might have just been talking from the story of the film. I'm not trying to put words in your mouth here. There's an idea out there that conspiracies, they give us the ability to kind of be the hero in the story. I'm the one that has figured out the truth. I'm the one that can see through the lies. You mentioned the Matrix. I've taken the red pill. I've become awakened. So I'm curious, with these conspiracy ideas, does that give you comfort? Do you find yourself feeling like the protagonist in the story when you are engaging these ideas?
Well, but when I was mentioning the protagonist, I was actually referring to the film, because I
thought so.
Pop culture. I'm a big believer in storyline. As a matter of fact,
of course, absolutely.
Better more than anything. No, it's okay. But that's a good point to make, because the writing is so important, and I apply that to everything. Meaning, when I look at something, I look at plot holes. I look at the plot holes in just about everything, including conspiracies, and I look, okay, does the story make sense? You know, because if you treat it like a boat, you know, if like a story ship, if there's too many plot holes, the story sinks, which is why we stop watching films. It's like, I don't even watch this. You're not invested anymore. Suspension of disbelief is a very powerful thing. Do most conspiracy people, though, no, they don't see themselves as the hero. Now, they may see themselves kind of as the Matrixy thing, and there's a lot of Matrix reference in conspiracies, of course. But they don't necessarily want to do that. It's a bittersweet thing, because kind of like the Matrix, because once you get into the conspiracy world, you realize the world is, again, pop culture references, the candy-coated topping, there's something else underneath it. You know, we're shown one thing, again, ignorance is bliss, but, what's underneath it isn't exactly the greatest stuff to look at. And so it kind of darkens your mood. You feel like, oh yeah, I may know more, maybe, but it's also darkened it. So let me throw out one more thing at you real quick, because I was thinking this one part of your earlier thing, where you were talking about about evidence and how things play out. And I was thinking about, conspiracies on equal footing, right? And one of the conspiracies, one of the ones people joke about, like there's Bigfoot and the Loch Ness Monster. And I go, oh, Loch Ness Monster, really? So are there plesiosaurs swimming around Loch Ness? Is it possible that some dinosaurs survived, the whole extinction stuff that was happening? If they were, chances are they were going to be waterborne anyway. And people say, no, Loch Ness monsters have been dead for 100 million years. I go, really? So I go, look at the coelacanth fish. Most people don't realize it's an ugly fish, fossilized, dead at least 70 million years. You can look it up, Coelcanth.
Sure.
Had lots of extra fins, very unattractive fish. Every scientist in the world, super dead, super extinct, gone. Here's the fossil records, blah, 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 carbon dating, blah, blah, blah. It's like, okay. And then the British caught one in a net off of Madagascar. And then another one off Mozambique, and then another one off of South Africa. And then National Geographic finally caved in and they started swimming with them. So the question is, I won't get into exactly how every scientist in the world would have bet the farm on it, and they would have been absolutely 100% put it in a frame wrong. Mm-hmm. But the question is, then you come back with circle back, and I ask you again, I say, is Loch Ness Monster possible? And they say, well, no. I go, why? Because it's been dead for at least 100 million years. I go, there's that fish over there, and that's not dead anymore. It's very much alive. So how do you know? It goes into the whole cryptozoology thing, which I love so much. Everything that scientists said or that they discovered later was initially a myth, especially when it comes to animals. The giant panda, total myth. Oh, then they have found one. Giant anaconda, total myth. Giant squid, which we still have never caught one of the big ones. Never ever caught one of the big ones. The only reason we know they're alive is because the sperm whales, which eventually have to surface, have huge track marks in some of their beaks and their stomachs. Sure. But we will never be able to catch one because they dive deeper and are faster than our best subs. We will never ever be able to catch one. Mm-hmm. So they're not a myth anymore. So sorry. So when it comes to qualifiers, it's really weird. The Bigfoot thing. People, it's like, well, Bigfoot's, there's no way Bigfoot could be real. I go, in 2015, they caught the billy ape. But people don't know about that. It's like it was a 6-foot tall chimp a whole species of them down South America.
Sure.
That are really, really gun shy of humans. And it's like, they were just like, yeah, humans don't go anywhere near them. And so they kept far, far away. And it's like, why didn't we catch them until 2015? I guarantee you, by the way, sorry, one more thing real fast. I believe there is a species of, and this is straight out of the movies, but I believe it because there are conspiracy whispers of it out there, of something I like to call the Goliath cobra. I think there's a species of snake out there that's really, really big and really, really fast. It scales up. Like, it's basically a giant cobra with the head the size of a horse. But when an explorer finds it, he doesn't get to log it because he's like, oh, wow, this is really, and then he's dead. I think there's species of things we find out there that are lost in the course of exploration. And anyway, so.
As I said, I appreciate you sharing that. I'm not,
yeah.
Someone listening to this might be irritated that I'm not addressing any specific claim. Again, what I'm getting at here is the way of thinking. On some level, I agree with you, Mark, this idea that things may be possible. But here's the thing. As a skeptic, I make a distinction between the possible and the actual. And so to me, to be a skeptic would be to accept a claim once it's been justified. So your example about the Loch Ness Monster, is it possible that the Loch Ness Monster could exist? Sure. But then I, as a skeptic, do not then say, therefore, my assertion is the Loch Ness Monster exists. And so the same way I would say, is it possible that Mark Sargent stuffs cotton candy up his nose? Well,
no,
possible.
And I understand that. No, trust me. I've met plenty of people that it's basically, unless the Loch Ness Monster pops up and slaps you in the face, nope, it's not.
Well, my standard of evidence might be a little lower than getting slapped in the face by him, but I hear what you're saying. He doesn't have to turn up on my doorstep. If he slaps me in the face, I'll take him to court. That'll show him.
No, I get it. No, and trust me, I am a big open-minded, a leap of faith type of guy, and we Flat Earth is, and I'm really surprised they didn't do this in the movie, and journalists haven't really touched on it much, which is why hasn't Flat Earth been painted more as a cult? Because we do use a lot of religious terms, leaps of faith and believers and non-believers. We don't have a Bible and robes and chanting or anything like that. Mm-hmm. But we do use a lot. I mean, I suppose if we had a compound somewhere in Oregon, we'd be in trouble. but we do conferences and stuff like that, and
Yeah, yeah.
the media has tried to go down that road. But yes, there, for me, the big difference between a skeptic and a non-skeptic, I think, is I'm willing to make those leaps of faith. Why do I make them more than other people? Is it because of my religious background? Maybe, but
Hmm.
I was away from the church for, I don't remember the last decade I was in church, other than weddings or funerals. So I don't know, but
Yeah.
it most of it is a leap of faith. Absolutely, sure.
That is helpful. That's exactly what I'm getting at in this interview. I'm hoping to learn about the way you think, and I'm getting a lot of valuable insights here by listening to you. I want
Ah,
to come back to this faith idea in a minute because you mentioned religious thinking, and I want to come back to that.
yeah,
I have another thing I want to bounce off you about conspiracies. One of them was I asked if you might feel like you are the protagonist or hero, and it sounds like sometimes you say people might feel as if that's the case, but that might just be a consequence of when you're reading these theories. Some of the perceived conspirators are just kind of dark figures, and so it might just be in contrast to that.
yeah.
My second thought here is a lot of times conspiracies, in my mind, are quite simple answers. And here's what I mean by that. I don't mean they're not intricate, because boy, are they detailed. I have seen the Q map of all these ideas. I've seen, intricate explanations for
Yeah.
how the Earth works in a flat model, for example. So it's not that they're not detailed or that they're not intricate. What I'm saying is we take a very complex, big, changing world, and we have it feels comforting, or there's some security sometimes if we feel like we have a simple answer for it. So for example, why is the Panama Canal in existence? Because there was a conspiracy. And
Right.
why is it that the Earth is flat but many people think it's round? So in other words, we find this one size fits all answer. Everything can go back to this conspiracy. There's this force out there that
Yeah.
in some way is conspiring to mislead us. And so I guess I
Right.
ask you, is the idea of some of these conspiracy ideas, is that comforting to you? Is this something that you find gives you an element of control in the world, or a sense of comfort or security knowing that you have an answer for it?
With that's yeah, it's kind of a mixed bag, but I'll do the best I can there.
Okay.
The With all other conspiracies, it's actually the opposite. As you learn about conspiracies, you realize how much control you don't have in the world. And even knowing the information doesn't really help you, especially when you know there are groups out there. The pecking order, who knows? Everything from the top ones in the conspiracy world would be, I don't know, the Illuminati, the Bilderbergs, the Rothschilds, the Vatican, the Council for Foreign Relation, the Trilaterals, the Masons, blah blah blah. Goes
Right,
on and on.
right.
Knowing that those groups are out there, it doesn't bother me so much. But there's a lot of people. It's like, oh, again, they're making decisions without my consent. They're making decisions that affect my life. So no, it doesn't make the effect. Again, with the conspiracy world, it kind of weighs on you because you're like, oh, there's these forces out there that are incomprehensibly powerful compared to me. But again, the whole flat Earth thing, though, the reason why it resonated as well as it did, it still is because it's a simple way to describe something that has just gotten more and more complex over the decades. Meaning, again, science people push back on me because I say, look, we've basically created a model of the universe that is way easier to explain, exponentially easier to explain than the solar system model. The solar system models takes trigonometry and calculus and quantum mechanics and all the other stuff.
Mhm.
And the flat Earth model is very, very simple. I mean, very, very simple. It's basically a snow globe. And people and you say, well, just because it's simple doesn't mean it's right. I go, no, but it's easier to understand. And you got to remember the audience, the masses out there. I don't want to necessarily call them mouth-breathing troglodytes, but the masses out there are very easy. Like, I mean, reality television, which I hate, is a big thing, and yet people are, they eat it up. So, but yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the
Sorry, go ahead.
easier. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say that's I think what I was getting at. You said the flat Earth model is simple and it's easy to understand. And so I guess
Yep.
my question is, do you derive comfort, a sense of security or comfort from the idea that I understand things? I have a model I understand now, and so because it's simple and easy to understand, that's comforting to me.
Well, yeah, but that really only applies to the flat Earth when it comes to conspiracies, because not only do I understand it, but it's easy to understand Meaning it's not this, we're not talking about millions of light years. We're not talking about vast, pulsars and gamma bursts and all this other stuff that could wipe you out at any given time. That you're this tiny little rock that could be snuffed out. That you are literally living in a building, a structure with walls and a floor and a ceiling. And again, we might as well get into this eventually. That it was built, because if it's not an organic, quote unquote, organic structure, then it was built by somebody. And at that point, you're going into, because at least half of our membership, at least in the United States, and probably, well, just about every English speaking country, are made up of very strong Christians. Because why, if it was created by someone. And at that point, you're really only going down one of two roads, one of two forks, which is it's either an advanced civilization that's older and more powerful than ourselves, or the divine, but really you're kind of splitting hairs there. I mean, let's face it, if a golden spaceship lands in Paris one day, there's going to be two groups of people that are going to show up, that's like, it's like, oh wow, giant blue people, they are like Avatar, all the nerds. And then you have other people, it's like, we have to build a church immediately for the blue people, and that will, and then you've got these two different camps. And so yeah, I mean, it's a faith is a very, very powerful thing, and there's a lot of Christians that jumped on this, and not just Christians, all religions kind of jumped on this, but the Christians, at least in the United States, really, really jumped on it.
But I'm seeing some similarities there with other conspiracy ideas. I mean, frankly, there are many, many pastors out there who are preaching about QAnon. There are many pastors out there that you mentioned a variety of groups a moment ago, the Bilderbergs, so on and so forth, all these different groups. And I know you made a distinction there between other conspiracy theories and flat Earth, but what we've created there in those other conspiracy theories is we always have an enemy. There is a them that is responsible for all this. And so what I meant by simplicity is not that that the details of the conspiracies are not complex. Like I said, I've seen that Q map there where they have all those things tied in. That is definitely complex. A lot of intricate ideas. But what we've done now is we've created a boogeyman, if you will. There is someone behind the curtain that we can blame for. We can say there's a mass shooting and they are behind it. And we can say there are some wildfires. They must have set them. And so I guess that's what I'm getting at. Let me address
that real quick, which is there's a new term that's been only out for, I don't know, less than a couple of years now, which is called auto-hoaxing. And basically what's happened is because of social media and because the internet is so webbed and so no pun intended, so intricate that if there's conspiracies here, then everything must be a conspiracy. Meaning now the default state, it's now guilty until proven innocent. Meaning, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, do I think there's legitimate shootings? Yeah, you bet I do. Not every shooting, is a false flag operation. Not every, and QAnon, I think that is cultivated by, different groups because they're awfully quiet this year, which is really weird. But yeah, let me do the whole they versus them, us versus them. Forget about that big map that you saw, which is unbelievably complex. It comes down to the haves and the have-nots. That's all it's ever been. That is a timeless story going back forever. And that is, if you have a huge, literally the golden rule, it, he who has the gold makes the rules. It's not just that. If you have the gold, you can bend or break the rules. You can make up whatever you want. And the rules also don't apply to you. If you reach a certain level, and I'm not talking about new money, I'm talking about Bill Gates. I'm talking about people old money. Guys like Elon Musk and Gates and the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, Mark Cuban, those guys, those are new money by comparison. They still have to follow the rules. And so people at the higher levels, yes, you're absolutely right. There has to be an adversary out there. Does have to be an us versus them scenario because, well, at the very least, you're talking about, class distinction. And we're not talking about just upper class. We're talking about, the 1%ers, not the 10%ers, the 1%ers. And that is people, it's one of the seven, one of the deadly sins, which is envy. We covet, we envy, and we are jealous. We are infinitely jealous. Not necessarily me, but lots of people. It's like, I have a boat, he has a bigger boat. I have a plane, he's got 5 planes. And when you get up to certain levels, it's like when they're unreachable, when there is not a chance in hell you are getting up to that pinnacle, you hate them. You look at it, and we do this with everything on a micro level. We do this with celebrities. How many times do we see it? We build up celebrities, and we love it when they fall. We love celebrities to get to certain power, but don't get too egotistical. Don't get too full of yourself, because then we're gonna hate you. And then when you fall, we're gonna laugh. And get satisfaction out of it. Sorry.
Yeah, a variety of ideas in there. That's very helpful. Again, what I'm trying to get is some insights into the way. If I could restate what I'm hearing about some patterns in terms of the way that you might think. One of them you mentioned earlier, that a central idea of when you're thinking of these conspiracies and considering them, it's about if you can make sense of them, if you can put it together, if you can connect the dots.
Yeah.
If I may draw another principle out of what you've just described, you said there must be an adversary, this idea of us versus them. Now, you reframed it as the haves and have-nots, but this idea that there are us and them, that is also central to your I guess, your worldview, your way of looking at things, that there is an adversary behind this, you're saying.
For me, it's not necessarily an adversary. It is there are people in power that make decisions that you have literally no part of whatsoever, where it's outside of, at least in the United States, outside of the democratic process. You don't have a vote. You don't have a say. And I've even taken it so far where I've told people, I go, look, voting at the federal level in this country, worthless. Utter worthless. And they say, why? I go, because I pose a question to them. I go, let's say you're a billionaire right now, and the election's coming up. Who do you donate money to? And then you go through this big decision process. Well, I go, am I pro this? Am I against this? There's all sorts of different things. And I go, no, you're missing the point. The point is that you give money to both parties. And it is also timeless, politicking, which is you give money to both parties because both parties don't care. All they care about is if they get the check. They don't care if you wrote a check to the other guy. They just care if they got their check. And if you have $1 billion, if you donate $1 million, you will absolutely get your picture taken with the president, right? And if you donate $10 million, you can sit in on some meetings. $100 million, you might even be able to influence a little bit of policy, some rules here and there. And it's like, what's your point? My point is that it took you being a billionaire to do any influence over anything at all. As a common general public, what are you getting out of this? And again, I'm not trying to be disparaging or discouraging. It's like, look, that's just the way of the world.
Well, I am a billionaire, so I didn't mention that.
Well, there you go. Anyway, so sorry. I want to keep you on track.
No, of course. You made some interesting observations there about power dynamics, the idea that there are people who are making decisions that are beyond our control.
Yeah.
Is that feeling of not having any control, of being, for lack of a better term, being helpless to change the course of some decisions that are made, does that drive your thinking in exploring conspiracy? Is there a connection between the patterns you find and conspiracies you find and a feeling of powerlessness or helplessness in you?
Not personally,
Okay.
but with a lot of people, absolutely. I mean, for a lot of people, and they have thrown this term around a lot, they have thrown out that it's a form of slavery. And that is, if you are being controlled without, your consent at all, then isn't that of some sort of form of slavery? It's like, yeah, but at the same time, you're volunteering it. I mean, you hire, it scales up, meaning we hire elected officials and there's more and higher, and they also have jobs to do. But then we kind of resent them at the same time. We elect people to do this, and when they don't do what we thought they were going to do, the promise of election, right? Like politicians make promises all the time. But at a certain level, there are no politics. And so does that make me feel personally that, is out of control? No, that's just how I'm about as objective as it gets. That's just how things work here. Mm-hmm. I mean, look, I've seen it too many times. I've seen it in again, if you're not married and have kids and you live as long as I have, you absorb way too much media. But I've just seen too many, I've seen the patterns where it's like, yeah, that's just how things work. People in power make decisions, and the people that don't have power resent them some of the time. But you remember, a lot of people, the majority, the masses, go along with it. The majority are just absolutely fine with it. They're like, oh yeah, everything's good, everything's good. And then there's a smaller sector, but so when like this year rolled around, you see more conspiracy people because things aren't as pleasant as they were last year. Mm-hmm. How's that?
Yeah. Is science a reliable path to discovering truth in your mind? The scientific process, is that a
Oh yeah,
reliable
No,
means?
so I love the scientific method. Absolutely. I know. And people will say, "Oh, aren't you anti-science?" Not that many people will say it, but they do say it every once in a while. I go, "No, of course not." I grew up in the tech world. I love science. I love cutting edge everything. Do I think we go too far sometimes? Sure, but that's the nature of science. Science is notorious for doing things because they can, not because they should. There was that great line from the documentary Trinity and Beyond, where they were talking about, should they jump up from the atomic bomb to the hydrogen bomb, right?
Mm-hmm.
And one of the leading physicists was going, yeah, he was a foreign guy, but he was basically saying they built it because let's just see if we can build it, right? And it's like, forget about the ramifications of this. Let's see if we can build it. And because that's what science does, they try to be they don't look at the crisis of conscience when they're doing that. And so, yeah, science is a great path to do things. But people forget, again, the general public, if you put on a white lab coat and you make a statement, you have almost instant credibility. Almost instant. People's like, well, he's smarter than I am, so we've got to go along with what he says. It's like, look, science is corruptible as anybody else. I can give you a laundry list of projects that have cut corners and straight out lied to make quarterly profits, to make the stock go up. Because look, scientists need Porsches too. They're gonna take the money.
So are you saying science is a reliable method by which we can discover truth, but scientists cannot be trusted? Would that be a fair restatement of what you've said?
Yes, science objectively as a methodology is a wonderful, wonderful thing. But people, especially men are corruptible. Doesn't matter where you are. I don't care what profession you are in. I don't care if you're wearing a lab coat or not. You can be corrupted and often are. Now, are some scientists, are they objective? Sure. But the difference is, and maybe it's the whole money thing, capitalism changed all that, which is, I mean, come on. We make products and we make things because and we rush them to market. That's one of the big things. I rattle off real fast. Lead paint was a great idea. Lead gasoline, not really seeing a lot of those anymore. Basically anything with lead. DDT, all the variations of DDT. Asbestos, a wonderful product, actually. I actually believe in asbestos. Great, and we still use it today. Unless you work in the factory, oh my God, those television commercials are still out there. All the scientists that took the money and said that cigarettes were absolutely fine for you. Things happen. So there's an old saying which is trust everyone but count your change, which is like, look, you trust science but don't absolutely just give it to them. Don't the science, which is why we do a lot of stuff ourselves, especially in the flat Earth community. It's like, look, for a lot of us, it's like unless we can run the experiment ourselves, there's only so much credit we're going to give you. Real quick, which is if you want to tell me what the boiling temperature of water is at sea level, yeah, I can do that right now. Sure. You want to tell me what the core of the Earth looks like? Oh no, not so fast. No. Because those diagrams, remember, they're just illustrations, right? 4,000 miles in the center, those wonderfully perfectly segmented bands, red and orange and yellow and white. And the deepest hole ever drilled was 8 miles? Where the hell are you getting those bands from? And they've been there forever. And science makes these massive leaps of faith, and they put their statements out there and they say, well, this is what we think it is. But then they take out the think part and they say, this is what it is. And, there should be, literally the globe should be just a giant question mark on the inside of it. If you believe in the globe. But that's not what they put. In fact, in this fine print in Wiki, they'll say, oh no, we have absolutely no idea what's going on down there. We're just extrapolating from volcanoes. It's like, well, why didn't you say that then? And while you're at it, why are you giving me the cross-section of Jupiter and Neptune and all that? Why are you giving me the cross-section of anything? So no, I mean, science, short version, science is a methodology, wonderful. People, super corruptible. And women get a pass for the most part.
Yeah. Well, no comment on that. I'll leave that comment to you. I'll say I'm not sure I agree with your characterization of science as being a leap of faith, or that I'm not sure that the level of confidence. I think there are varying levels of confidence based on the justifications we have on various claims.
Yeah. You're right. No, of course.
On its own merit. But something that you said interests me there. You were mentioning various examples in the past of when the prevailing thought or when science has been wrong. You gave some examples in the past of things like leaded paint, things like that.
Yeah.
It's almost as if you were phrasing that as not necessarily a negative thing, but as a demonstration that science is not necessarily always trustworthy. I would argue that's the strength of the scientific approach, that we can point to changes in our practices and changes as new knowledge came about. We stopped doing things that were harmful, and we have improved our beliefs. And we have, so to me, the idea that you can point to a trail of mistakes or a trail of misconceptions or poor ideas in the past, to me, that's a strength, because that demonstrates to me that we have improved by changing our mind. So my question to you is,
that's a good point.
You respond to that.
Nobody has ever brought that angle up to me, and that's good. I actually like that, because you're right, and I'm not trying to paint it exactly a negative light. I know, look, science brought us to where we are today, but at the same time, what I'm trying to tell people is, look, do your own research and don't trust everything completely, absolutely implicitly based on just because, well, it came from the world of science, therefore it absolutely must be true. One of the most arrogant statements I ever heard, and I know where he was going, he probably just worded it wrong, was from Neil deGrasse Tyson, where he says that science is true whether or not you believe in it. And it's like, yeah, you probably should have phrased that differently, because what you're saying there is that science is absolutely true. But I know that's not what he meant. Yes, things do change. You're right. Things do get adjusted, but usually only after something bad happens. Where it's like, oh, this is absolutely great. We should move forward this. And then all of a sudden something terrible happens. And it's like, yeah, well, science doesn't... Again, I'm not picking on science or scientists necessarily, but it's just one of the flaws in the system, which is science rarely, if ever, apologizes for anything, because it's like, well, that's just what it is. Kind of like the, let's use a positive one, the double slit experiment, which I love so much, which is, things don't apparently render as detailed as they can unless you're looking at them. And science can't explain it in any way, shape, or form, but since it's repeatable, it's under the banner of science. It's under the umbrella of science. It's like, oh, this is us. This is science. We plant our flag in this. It's like, it's freaking magic. And, by all standards, it's like, so why are you putting in science? Because it's repeatable. All right, fine. It's like,
But I hear what you're saying, but I would say those same scientists, something is accepted because it's been repeatable and testable and provable. But if new information came to light, refuted that, I would say that scientists would then change the theory. They would move the flag. Sure.
You're absolutely right.
Exactly.
It's a bittersweet thing for me, because, again, I'm not. Trust me when I say this. I don't hate scientists. I don't, because there's so very few that I get to deal with. But let me throw out one real quick. There's very few in the physicist world. There's only 3 media scientists that are even out there. They're even willing to go. They even put on camera Neil deGrasse Tyson, Brian Cox from England, and Michio Kaku from Japan. And some people say, "Oh, throw in Bill Nye." It's like, okay, there's your weird thing, because Bill Nye, he's not a scientist. He's actually a comedian from a comedy troupe in Seattle. But somebody said, oh yeah, you're thin, you're angular, put on a lab coat, and they did this little thing called Bill Nye the Science Guy. He was not a science guy in any way, shape, or form. He's got a bachelor's in mechanical, and he completely ditched that to do acting. But because he looks credible on camera, the media kept putting him on for different things, and because nobody bothered to check any of that, he gets brought on for, oh my God, let's talk about climate change with Bill Nye. Let's talk about quantum mechanics. He was a freaking advisor on the Mars rover. It's like, what are you doing? I watched this guy growing up on Seattle television. He was, you see the skits he was on. It was like, because media has become so powerful in the conditioning of media, because he was syndicated, Disney picked him up because he was family friendly. Because he was syndicated, people grew up with him, and now some of those people are producers, and those producers, because the general scientists, I got to get this out there.
Sure.
General scientists, for whatever reason, when you get your master's or your PhD in physical science, you start losing vocabulary. I don't know why. You start talking in monosyllables. You're very, very tunnel vision. It's like, yes, that is true, and producers hate that. So they bring on Bill. Bill just let it fly and talk about stuff. And people at home are like, oh yeah, I remember him from when I was on PBS when I was growing up. Therefore, he is credible. Sorry. I have a rant on my channel literally called the Code of Credibility. Literally, it's called that. And it's literally says, if you're wearing a white lab coat, you are inside. We've done this. We have had people, we have put our guys in white lab coats with clipboards. It's amazing how many more people will talk to you if you are in white lab coats and clipboards.
What you're describing is a logical fallacy called the argument from authority. If someone is believing something because an authority has told them, then yes, that is a bad reason to believe. But my contention would be, we don't necessarily believe something because Bill Nye said it. We don't necessarily believe something because Neil deGrasse Tyson is the guy that said it. I would say, as a skeptic, we accept claims when there's justification, and we also have a willingness to revise our ideas or our claims when new information comes to light. So I hear what you're saying, but what you're describing is a real thing. But people have this tendency, that back in the day, you talk about cigarettes, they would say 9 out of 10 doctors agree that this cigarette is good for you. Yeah. That's a fallacy. That's a bad reason to believe something because you're relying on the prettiness of a lab coat to make that point. So I guess
we have learned from our mistakes. I mean, we don't sell heroin and cocaine in drugstores anymore.
It's true.
We don't sell machine guns to the general public in hardware stores anymore. We used to. There's all sorts of stuff we don't do anymore. We have learned, through trial and error.
My question to you would be, I'm not trying to speed the conversation along, but I know you have other things to do. I want to respect your time here. What would change your mind? Let's just start with one claim, with the flat Earth claim. What would change your mind?
Two things. I get asked this every once in a while. There are two things that could be done. One is kind of expensive. One isn't. One would be put any camera 4K or higher on a capsule of any rocket that's going to leave orbit. Point it down towards the launch pad, launch it, send it off, and eventually, don't hit pause, don't hit edit, don't you dare, don't deviate from it in any way, shape, or form, and eventually the world should form into this wonderful globe as this thing leaves. It's never happened in the history of space travel, which is statistically unbelievable to me. That'd be the easiest way to do it, and let us get a hold of it.
So the existing photos, existing videos from space, those ones you can see as being
absolutely fake,
inadmissible. Okay, so
nothing. Yeah, nothing until we have decent footage where we can actually look at it. Where you want a cut shot to space? Come on. We know full well what can be faked in film. We've been doing it since 2001: A Space Odyssey, which still it has aged amazingly well on Blu-ray. I challenge anybody, watch when they're flying to the moon in that, and that's from '68. That's from a long time ago. It is gorgeous. So then
I'm curious why your reason for changing your mind would be additional footage. Could that footage not be faked?
because there's one piece of footage that's never ever happened. Anyone can do cut shots of anything. We've seen this from Interstellar and Gravity and just every space movie that's ever happened. But we've never seen, never seen a piece of footage where the rocket, where literally it's pointing down. It's always on the first stage or the second stage, coincidentally, and they just tumble off. It's like, oh, okay, or they cut to graphics. It's like once it gets out of visual range, of whatever, it's like, oh, here's the computer model of exactly what's happening. It's like, we don't want to see that. We want to see the footage of the thing forming. And it should have absolutely happened, by the way, during the Roadster in Space. That whole SpaceX Roadster in Space thing, which I don't even want to get into.
I was gonna say, I think I interrupted you. You said two things. You said one was the camera. I didn't mean to.
Yeah, one was the camera. That's harder to do because you're gonna have to find a rocket program to do it. But I came up with an easier one to do, which is what I call the Spacesuit Challenge. Which is, in fact, I made a video specifically for it on my channel called the For Want of a Nail. Was that what it was? Crap. Oh no, the Lost Nail. That's what it's called. The Lost Nail. I don't know if you remember the old, is it proverb or just a thing where you've heard, for want of a nail, the shoe was lost, then the horse was lost, the rider, then the battle in the kingdom. And the whole kingdom was lost because of one, the butterfly effect, basically. And what I said is that the spacesuit cannot work the way it's supposed to. It's one of the laws of thermodynamics, which is that pressure cannot exist in non-pressure without a barrier. And anything that's put in a vacuum with any sort of flexibility, I don't care if it's a basketball, a football, an action figure, a Stretch Armstrong, they all blow, tin can, they all expand and they detonate. They blow up in a vacuum because the pressure difference is too great. There's only one thing that doesn't exhibit that property, and that is a spacesuit. A spacesuit should turn into a parade float, and then it should burst, and it should die, and it's absolutely articulate. I mean, you can move your elbows and legs, your fingers can manipulate complex electronics. None of that should happen whatsoever. And so my challenge was, I said, anything with a spacesuit in it, if the spacesuit is a lie, then anything that ever shows a spacesuit or is tied to a spacesuit is also a lie. So I said, all right, fine, loan me a spacesuit, because we've never had anyone die in a spacesuit ever. Statistically, really, really interesting. Loan me a spacesuit from the 60s era up until now. Put me in any sort of university vacuum chamber, pull the switch, tell me what happens. Don't give me a G-force suit where I'm tethered. Give me the backpack version, the self-contained. What is this miracle technology that's in the backpack of any spacesuit that stops the vacuum of space? No one will touch it. No one has any explanation. People say, oh, it's layers. It's going, no, my winter coat has layers. All it does is stop the cold. So what happens there?
So
and I put that challenge has been out there for 3 years now. No one will touch it, and it's relatively cheap by comparison. I mean, literally all you have to do is give me, universities have vacuum chambers. Brian Cox has personal use to a vacuum chamber. Why has that ever happened? And does that absolutely prove a flat Earth? No, it does not, but it destroys the whole space thing. The whole idea of the space program, especially in dealing with a vacuum chamber.
Yeah, so my definition of a skeptic earlier was somebody who accepts claims with justification and then is willing to revise their views. If I'm hearing you correctly, you've got two specific objections, one being the lack of any non-cut footage.
Yeah.
One being this objection about the spacesuit and the apparent inability to survive under the conditions of space.
Yeah.
Am I hearing you correctly that you're saying that evidence that is, in your eyes, irrefutable in those areas, that those would be factors that would cause you to change
I'd quit. I'd absolutely quit. I've told people, I go, look, people think that I'm really enjoying doing what I do. I do the whole flat Earth thing. It's like, no. I didn't want to do this. You think I like getting? I don't even read the comments on YouTube anymore. I can't. I mean, I'd curl up in a field position and probably die. I mean, it's awful. So no, I would absolutely quit flat Earth tomorrow. In fact, if I had a subject matter expert that would call me up, every subject matter, I don't get a list of them, a playlist on my channel. Everybody from all branches of the military, engineers, air traffic controllers, everybody that has to do with shipping, everybody has told me the same thing. In fact, I haven't had anyone from the military call me up to rebut the other military guys, or a pilot to call me to go. Look, trust me when I say this. I'd love to get out of this, and in fact, one more last thing. And you can have your last question, which is there was another challenge I put out there because people say, well, I've seen the curve from the airplane, I've seen it from a balloon, I've seen it from the beach. It's like, well, I don't know. And yet Neil deGrasse Tyson, I've got a wonderful video on my channel where Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about the Red Bull jump, if you remember that, the Felix Baumgartner thing. And it was really interesting. I was surprised that he even did this. He did this on stage at this conference, and he said that he thought it was scientifically irresponsible for the Red Bull jump to claim that they saw the curvature of the Earth. And he goes, 130,000 feet, you shouldn't be able to see any curvature whatsoever. It's like, wow, wonder why you would say that. And so when people say to me that they've seen the curvature from the airplane, I go, no, you're seeing 5 lights. And they say, what are you talking about? I go, the Orwell 5 lights, 4 lights thing. I go, you're conditioned. You want to see the curvature. That's the big difference. You absolutely want to see it because you've been told this so many times. Last quote, because I know I've been giving you a lot of quotes. George Orwell, back in 1946, I believe, 1946, he wrote an article for London. He was not a flat earther. But it was really interesting. He was talking about, remember what you were talking about, how people believe science just because they say something. And he was saying, you could walk up to anybody in the street and you ask them how they know the world is a globe. And they'll say, and their first response is always, what are you talking about? We know. It's obvious. It is known, Game of Thrones. It is known, right? Mm-hmm. And then he goes, if you push them on it, they get angry. Because then they realize it's not that they know, they've been told. How did everybody in the world know the world was a globe in 1946? NASA wasn't even founded until 1958. How did everybody know? They didn't know. That's because they were told. They were told in textbooks, just gone over and over and over again. There's no rocket programs. How do you know until you actually see it for yourself? And you can claim geometry all you want. Sorry, math isn't going to save you. Not in this case. The evidence is up there, and then only people who go up there are military. So sorry, I could talk about this
No,
forever.
don't need to apologize. I would say, yeah, I've read that quote before, and again, that's one of those things that I personally tend to find, at least in my own belief system, actually to be a strength. If someone said to me that you are not 100% sure of something, to me, the lack of 100% certainty, I think, is a blessing in a lot of ways, because it invites us to question what our justifications are for believing something. And so,
Agreed.
And so, yeah, I know. I appreciate your time, and I don't want to keep you too much longer. But I just wanted you earlier. You mentioned a connection to your faith and religious thinking. We don't have to go on a full treatise here on this, but I just wanted to circle back to that here as we start to wrap up our time. I know you've got other things.
No,
to do.
that's fine. That's fine. What do you got?
In your mind, is there a connection between the Christian faith and a connection to conspiracy thinking? Do you think that this is something that is connected in some way? If that's too big a question.
No. I'll give you broad strokes, because honestly, I don't know too much. I mean, right wing politics tend to lean more Christian because of the whole abortion versus non-abortion thing. There's a lot more biblical literalists on the right wing. And if you're right wing, you believe more in conspiracies. Definitely. In fact, I can tell you, the conferences I go to, there's not a lot of left there. Now, when it came to the flat earth and Christianity, more people got. I've heard the story so many times where people that were falling away from the church came back to the church because of flat earth. In fact, I've had people say that they've never seen a recruiting tool for religion more than the flat earth, because, again, the default shape, which is, if it's a snow globe, then that snow globe was built by somebody, plain and simple. And that's all it takes for some people to just nudge them back. And it was the same with me. I didn't go to church for a long, long time, and I still haven't really been to church. But it snapped me back into spirituality, because it's like, okay, it was built by someone. Ancient civilization, maybe. Santa Claus in a bathrobe on a Sunday, maybe. I don't know, maybe. But there's definitely a connection there between conspiracies and the church. But
interesting.
Flat Earth, unfortunately, has cultivated that recently over the last 5 years. Definitely, because, again, it's one of those reverse things where you go forward, and if you get into Flat Earth, because it is so big, everything is under its umbrella. So you have to revisit everything you thought of before. It's like, wow, if Flat Earth is true,
because
and all this other stuff.
The entirety of the system is entailed in this model, and so you have to have a maker, right?
Yeah, and people have really, I have seen people that have now been way more open to general conspiracies because of Flat Earth, absolutely. And it's a blessing and a curse. I love people to be more open-minded. However, there's now people that believe that every single conspiracy is absolutely 100% true. And it's unfortunate, because there's a lot of conspiracies that contradict each other.
I've noticed that, yeah.
And when that happens, then you should see their thought processes. They're all over the place. They're like, well, it's this, and then which is why I made a video some time ago. I referenced a Twilight Zone episode, one of the best ones ever, called "The Monsters Are Due on Maple Street," where
classic.
This is classic. Where that was made in the freaking late 50s, early 60s, where the people were absolutely paranoid of each other, but it didn't take much to do it. Meaning, all you had to do is throw people in you create people, you put people in a situation where it cultivates suspicion. And wow, it's phenomenal, and it was not out of bounds. Things got really lit up by the end, but you got to remember the era it was, and it wouldn't be that much different now, except for social media. You kill the internet, you put it in people, you can have people turn on each other pretty fast.
Yeah, definitely. I was reading a review or a description of Behind the Curve, the documentary you mentioned earlier, and they referred to flat Earth believers as some of the most ridiculed people on the planet. As we're wrapping up here, I'm just curious, if someone was attempting to change your mind, if someone wanted to have discourse with you, in your mind, is ridicule a helpful approach in changing your mind? If somebody calls you crazy or stupid, is that helpful to you in changing your thinking?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I go the other way, whereas people say, well, why don't you get mad when people come at me and they say, oh, you're stupid, you're a retard. And it's like, well, I can't because 5 years ago I used to be on that side of the fence. You know, it's be hypocritical for me. You know, people say, why don't you lose your patience? Because I've done interviews that have been really hostile. And they said, why did you stay calm? And I go, how could I get mad at them? I go, I was there. It's like, look, I don't blame you. I'd be mad too. That's how I was. I mean, I was literally the first time I even clicked on a flat Earth video 5 years ago, almost six now. I literally got physically flushed. It was weird. I was embarrassed, and I was alone in a room with curtains drawn, right? And I was embarrassed to click on this. I'm going, what the hell? I've been clicking on weird stuff on the internet for a long time. Nothing's embarrassed. Well, maybe a few things, but nothing. This shouldn't even faze me at all. And I realized at that point, it's like, wow, there's something happening here. There's a conditioning thing that I didn't realize was in me, which was why am I getting really worked up over clicking on this video? And yeah, and it's the most polarizing topic I've ever seen. Ever. I don't care what topic you're talking about. I've never seen a topic that has generated so many emotions on both sides.
Yeah. Well, for the record, I do not think you are crazy, and I most certainly do not think you are stupid. I definitely think you're wrong, but that's what discourse is about.
That's fine.
That's fine. I appreciate your time. You have been so gracious to interact with me, a total random stranger from Ohio. I've learned a lot by listening to you. I'm trying to get a glimpse into the way you think, and I got that today.
Cool.
Biggest, hardest hitting question for last. Pineapple on pizza, yes or no?
Only if there are large, tasty slices of Canadian bacon. Only.
Good call. I'll allow that. That's a good call. Before we talk today, I'm in the same boat, by the way. I worked at a pizza shop, and talking about paradigm shift, all right, I worked for years convinced that pineapple was nasty, and then I tried it one night, and I was converted. And so there's a great metaphor for our conversation. Before we talk today, I mentioned to you that if you have a charitable cause or an organization, something you're passionate about, that I'd be happy to make a donation just as a way to thank you. Is there a certain cause or something that you're passionate about in terms of a charitable
yeah, if there was going to be any cause, it would be a whatever local, I don't know what city you're in, but a local women's shelter that's closest to you. I believe that women have gotten the short end of the stick for a long time, and I support them any way I can.
Well, thank you for sharing that. I will be, after our call today, making a small donation to Project Woman, a local organization here in Springfield that cares, looks after women in need, and I'll do that in the name of Mark Sargent. I appreciate you being with us.
Thank you.
As we wrap up, how can people get in touch with you? If they want to learn more, how can they follow you? Where can they find you?
Oh, easiest way to find me is just to go into YouTube and type in Flat Earth Mark. That'll pull up a lot of content. I encourage people to look at just about anybody's content. There's a YouTube documentary, of course, called Behind the Curve. I've got a podcast called Strange World, and 3 books on Amazon. All you have to do is type in Mark Sargent Flat Earth. Just type in Mark Sargent Flat Earth. In anything, you'll find it. You'll find me. I'm easy.
Awesome.
And my phone number and my email address and my physical address are all out there. Feel free to reach out.
I appreciate that. Thanks so much. I cannot thank you enough for being with us. I had so many more questions for you, but who knows? Maybe we'll get a chance to talk again.
Sure.
Awesome. Well, thanks again, Mark. I'm going to go ahead and wrap this up. We will end this. This has been Jack Talks with Humans. I talked with a human today. It was Mark Sargent. I appreciate so much his time with us. And stay tuned. I might have some other guests to talk to soon. Have a good one. Stay safe out there. I'll see you next time.